In this section, we are still factoring trinomials. The difference here is that we have trinomials of the form ax squared plus bx plus c. This means I have a coefficient of x squared other than 1. Okay, look at problem 1, 3x squared plus 8x plus 4. We want to factor these completely. And just as a reminder, always look for a greatest common factor first. Okay, there may not be one, but that's an important step you should always remember to do first. So if I look at this problem, there's no common factor. I do have a coefficient or a number in front of x squared. What I want to do is factor this or break it down into two binomials just as we did in the previous section. Okay, here is the method that I'm going to show you for factoring these trinomials. Now there are many methods out there that you may have seen before, but to me this is the easiest, simplest way to get to our answer. Okay, so the first step will be to make sure your polynomial is in descending order, which it is, highest exponent first. Multiply the first coefficient times the last. So if I multiply 3 times 4, that would be 12. Make a list of the factors of 12. From this list, I'm looking for the two numbers, because this is a positive 12, okay, the two numbers that will add to be 8x. Okay, which two numbers from my list would add to be 8x? Well, we know that 2 plus 6 would be 8. So what we have to do now is attach the x to both numbers. So I know if I added 2x plus 6x, it would be 8x. Okay, here's my process. Once I find the two numbers, 2x and 6x are the two terms, divide each one by the leading term in your original problem. So I'm going to divide both of these by 3x squared. And then next step, very important, is to reduce both of these fractions. Okay, we're going to reduce actually by using the quotient rule that we talked about in the previous chapter. Okay, if I reduce 2x over 3x squared, well, 2 over 3 is not going to reduce, but x over x squared, subtract the exponents, would leave me with 1x in the denominator. 6x over 3x squared, I can reduce and say 3 will go into 6 2 times. So I would have 2 over x to the first over x squared will be 1x in the denominator. So all I've done is just reduce those two fractions. This method is sometimes called the bottoms up method, if you've heard that before. And it's because my answer is going to be written from these two fractions just from the bottom to the top. Okay, so I'm going to look from bottom to top and write out two binomials from these fractions. In the first one, I have 3x on the bottom, positive 2 on the top. In the second fraction, x on the bottom, positive 2 on the top. So these are my two factors. I've just factored that trinomial. It would be 3x plus 2 times x plus 2 as my answer. Okay, how do I know this is correct? Well, we can always check, which is a good idea. If you check, this means we want to fold these back together, so I'm going to use the one I have written here. 3 times x is 3x squared. 3x times 2 would be 6x. 2 times x is 2x. And 2 times 2 is 4. Combine like terms. And I do have the original polynomial or trinomial that I started out with. Okay. All right, let's look at a second example. We have 2x squared minus 7x plus 5. All of these, the directions will say factor. Okay, it will not tell you to use a specific method. So again, make sure it's in the right order, which it is. Check for a GCF, which there's not one. Multiply first number times the last number. So that would be positive 10. Make a list of the factors of 10. 1 times 10 and 2 times 5. Now what am I looking for? The two numbers, because again this is positive, the two numbers that will add to be negative 7. Okay, or we can say negative 7x. Well, we know it's going to be 2 and 5, but in order for it to be negative, they will both have to be negative, and then we attach x to both numbers. So those are the two terms that we will use. Negative 2x and negative 5x. Divide each one by the first term in your trinomial. So I divide by 2x squared. Divide by 2x squared. Next step is reduce. Okay, if I reduce negative 2x over 2x squared, 2 will go into 2 one time. So I'm left with negative 1 in the numerator. X to the first over x squared will leave me with 1x in the denominator. Okay, reduce the second term. Negative 5 over 2 will not reduce. X over x squared leaves me with x in the denominator. Okay, now remember, bottom to top, or we say bottoms up, bottom to top, my answer would be x minus 1 times 2x minus 5. So those two binomials, if I multiply them back together, would equal back to the original problem that I started with. X minus 1 times 2x minus 5. Multiply x times x is 2x squared. X times negative 5 is negative 5x. Negative 1 times 2x is negative 2x. Negative 1 times negative 5, positive 5. Combine like terms, and we have the exact polynomial that we tried to factor from the beginning. This is how you will know your answer is correct.